The Meridian Tower's 42nd floor buzzed with holiday cheer that December evening, but something felt wrong from the moment I walked into the party. Maybe it was the way my wife Zara kept checking her phone, or how our CEO Derron Wilder kept glancing at her across the room. The company had rented out the entire executive conference space for the annual celebration, complete with catered appetizers, an open bar, and enough corporate small talk to make anyone reach for the whiskey. I'm Trent Ardell, and I've been managing project timelines for this tech consulting firm for 8 years. Not glamorous work, but it pays well enough to afford our downtown apartment and Zara's shopping habits. She works in HR for the same company, which is how we met 5 years ago during a harassment seminar. The irony wasn't lost on me now. "Trent, you look like someone stole your lunch money," Paula from accounting said, appearing beside me with a martini. "Loosen up, it's Christmas?" I forced a smile and sipped my beer. Just tired, long week. That was an understatement. The past month had been strange. Zara coming home late, claiming overtime, new clothes appearing in her closet, hushed phone calls that ended when I entered the room, the kind of behavior that makes a husband's stomach twist into knots, even when he doesn't want to admit what he's seeing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Derron's voice boomed across the room. He stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights twinkling behind him like a constellation. At 45, he still looked like the college quarterback he'd once been, with silver threading through his dark hair and a smile that could sell ice to penguins. Before we get too deep into the festivities, I want to recognize some outstanding achievements this year. The crowd gathered around him, drinks in hand. I spotted Helena Wilder, Derron's wife, standing near the bar. She wore an elegant black dress and had the kind of poise that comes from old money and private schools. Her expression was unreadable as she watched her husband command the room. "First, let's congratulate the Morrison account team for landing our biggest contract to date," Derron continued. Applause rippled through the crowd. And special recognition goes to Zara Ardell for her exceptional work in HR compliance. More applause. Zara beamed, her blonde hair catching the light as she moved toward the front of the room. She wore a new red dress I'd never seen before, one that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Actually," Zara said, her voice carrying that confident tone she used in meetings, "since everyone's here, I have some news to share." She looked directly at me, her green eyes sparkling with something I couldn't identify. "Trent and I are going to have a baby!" The room erupted. Colleagues rushed forward with congratulations, slapping my back and shaking my hand. Mick from IT whooped loudly. Tara from marketing started crying happy tears. George from legal raised his glass in a toast. But I didn't move. I couldn't move. Because 3 years ago, after months of trying unsuccessfully to conceive, I'd undergone extensive medical testing. The results were clear and irreversible, a genetic condition that made fatherhood impossible. Zara had been there for every appointment, every test, every devastating conversation with specialists. She knew. She'd always known. The congratulations continued around me, a blur of faces and voices. Someone thrust a champagne glass into my hand. Someone else asked about due dates and baby names. Through it all, Zara smiled and accepted well wishes, playing the part of the glowing, expectant mother perfectly. I stood up slowly, the room gradually quieting as people noticed my expression. "That's wonderful news, Zara," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "But there's just one small problem. I can't have children, so maybe you should be congratulating Derron instead." You could have heard a pin drop. Zara's face went white, then red. Derron's confident smile faltered, replaced by something that looked like panic. "Trent, what are you talking about?" Zara laughed, but it sounded forced. "That's a terrible joke." "Is it?" I pulled out my phone and connected it to the room's presentation system, something I'd learned to do during countless project meetings. "Because I have some interesting documents here." The large screen behind Derron flickered to life, displaying a medical insurance authorization form. Zara's name was clearly visible at the top, along with a request for prenatal care coverage. But in the emergency contact section, instead of my name, someone had written Derron Wilder in Zara's handwriting. The silence stretched like a taut wire. I could hear the building's ventilation system humming, the distant sound of traffic 42 floors below, the rapid breathing of 60 people trying to process what they were seeing. "This is ridiculous," Derron said, his voice tight. "Someone's obviously doctored this document. Trent, I think you've had too much to drink." "Have I?" I switched to the next slide, a series of appointment confirmations sent to Zara's email, each one listing Derron as the contact person for emergencies. Then another slide showing his travel calendar with business trips that coincided perfectly with her doctor visits. Helena Wilder stepped forward from the back of the room. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "Those dates match exactly with your solo business trips to Chicago, darling. The ones where you said you needed to focus without distractions." Derron turned toward his wife, his face flushing. "Helena, this is obviously some kind of setup. Trent's clearly having some kind of breakdown." "Am I?" I clicked to the final slide, a screenshot of text messages between Zara and Derron, discussing appointment times and expressing excitement about our little secret. I'd found them on Zara's laptop 3 days earlier, after she'd forgotten to log out of her messaging app. The room exploded into chaos. Voices rose in shock, anger, and disbelief. Someone knocked over a glass, sending it shattering across the floor. Mick from IT let out a long whistle. Paula from accounting grabbed her friend's arm and whispered urgently, "Trent, stop this right now." Zara's voice cut through the noise. "You're embarrassing yourself and everyone else. This is completely inappropriate." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman I'd married, the one who'd held my hand during those awful medical appointments, who'd cried with me when we learned we couldn't have children naturally, who'd promised we'd figure out other options together. Now she stood there, pregnant with another man's child, trying to gaslight me in front of our entire company. "You're right," I said quietly. "This is inappropriate. A lot of things have been inappropriate lately." I disconnected my phone from the presentation system and walked toward the elevator, leaving behind the chaos, the accusations, and the wife who just destroyed our marriage in the most public way possible. As the elevator doors closed, I heard Helena Wilder's voice one more time, clear and cold. "Well, Derron, I think we need to have a very long conversation when we get home." Monday morning arrived like a hangover. I'd spent the weekend in a hotel room, staring at the ceiling and trying to process what my life had become. Zara had called 17 times and sent 43 text messages, each one more desperate than the last. I'd read them all and responded to none. The Meridian Tower lobby buzzed with the usual morning energy, but I felt the stares as I walked toward the elevators. Word travels fast in a building full of gossip-hungry office workers, and our company's holiday party had apparently provided enough drama to fuel conversations for weeks. "Trent!" Ed, the security guard, called out as I passed his desk. He was a retired cop in his 60s, the kind of guy who noticed everything and forgot nothing. "Got a minute?" I walked over, expecting some kind of sympathy or awkward small talk about the weekend's events. "Listen, I've been doing security for 20 years, Ed said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "I've seen a lot of things, and I've learned when to speak up and when to keep my mouth shut." He handed me a small USB drive. "The party was recorded by our security cameras, standard procedure for company events. Management usually reviews the footage for insurance purposes, but I thought you might want to see it first." I stared at the drive in my palm. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because I've got a daughter your age, and if some piece of garbage did to her what they did to you, I'd want someone to help level the playing field." Ed's expression was serious. "There's stuff on there from before your big announcement, stuff that might interest you." I pocketed the drive and thanked him. As I headed toward the elevator, I wondered what else I was about to discover about my wife's betrayal. The 38th floor felt like a minefield. Conversations stopped when I walked by. Some colleagues offered sympathetic nods, others avoided eye contact entirely. I made it to my cubicle without any direct confrontations, but I could feel the weight of dozens of stares. "Trent Ardell, please report to Human Resources immediately." The announcement came over the intercom at exactly 9:15. I grabbed my coffee and headed 2 floors up, wondering if I was about to be fired for causing a scene at the company party. The HR department occupied a corner of the 40th floor, with glass-walled conference rooms and motivational posters about teamwork and synergy. Margaret Chen, the HR director, waited for me in conference room B. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd been with the company since before I was hired. Sitting across from her was someone I didn't recognize, a thin man in an expensive suit with a briefcase open in front of him. "Trent, this is David Morrison from our legal department," Margaret said. "Please have a seat." I sat down, wondering if they were about to serve me with some kind of lawsuit. "First, let me say that we're sorry you're going through this difficult situation," Margaret began. "However, we need to address the events that occurred at Friday's party." I showed factual documents, I said. Everything I presented was true. "We're not questioning the accuracy of your information," Morrison said, "but we are concerned about how it was obtained and presented. There are privacy issues to consider, as well as the professional conduct standards outlined in your employment contract." I felt my jaw clench. "So I'm being punished for exposing an affair between my wife and my boss?" "You're not being punished," Margaret said quickly, "but we do need to investigate the situation thoroughly. Both Zara and Derron have been placed on administrative leave pending our review. That caught my attention. Both of them? Company policy is very clear about relationships between supervisors and subordinates, Morrison explained, especially when those relationships aren't disclosed through proper channels. There are also questions about potential misuse of company resources and time. I thought about the travel expenses, the late-night meetings, the appointments scheduled during work hours. Maybe there was more justice in the world than I'd expected. What does this mean for me? I asked. You'll continue in your current role while we conduct our investigation, Margaret said. We ask that you refrain from discussing the situation with other employees and that you direct any media inquiries to our communications department. Media inquiries? Morrison and Margaret exchanged a look. Someone filmed your presentation on Friday night, Morrison said. Parts of it have been posted on social media. The story is starting to get attention. I left the HR meeting feeling like I was living in someone else's life. My phone had been buzzing constantly with notifications, but I'd been ignoring it. Now I pulled it out and saw dozens of missed calls, text messages, and social media alerts. The video was everywhere. Husband exposes wife's affair at office party had been viewed over 200,000 times. The comments ranged from supportive to vicious, with strangers dissecting every detail of my marriage and offering unsolicited advice about revenge and divorce. My personal email inbox was flooded with interview requests from local news stations, podcasters, and something called the Cheating Spouse Chronicles. I deleted them all without reading past the subject lines. But one email caught my attention. It was from Helena Wilder. Trent, I think we should talk. I have information that might interest you. Can you meet me for coffee this afternoon? Helena. I stared at the message for a long time. Helena had been married to Derron for 15 years. She'd built a life with him, probably loved him, definitely trusted him. Now she was reaching out to the man who just exposed her husband's affair in the most public way possible. I typed back, Starbucks on 5th Street, 3 p.m. The rest of the workday passed in a blur of sympathetic glances and whispered conversations. I tried to focus on project schedules and client reports, but my mind kept wandering to the USB drive in my pocket and the meeting with Helena. At 3 o'clock, I found her sitting in a corner booth, wearing dark sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low over her face. She looked nothing like the elegant socialite from the party. This was a woman trying to avoid recognition. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. I wasn't sure you would. To be honest, I'm not sure why you wanted to meet. Helena removed her sunglasses, and I saw that her eyes were red from crying. But there was something else there, too. Anger. Because my husband has been lying to me for months, and I want to know exactly how deep this goes, she said. I think you might be the only person who can help me find out. She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of Derron's credit card statement. Highlighted charges showed expensive dinners, hotel rooms, and jewelry purchases, all on dates when he'd claimed to be working late or traveling alone. I found these this morning, Helena said, along with receipts for a weekend getaway to Napa Valley that I definitely didn't take with him. I studied the charges, feeling a familiar twist in my stomach. The Napa trip was in October. Zara told me she was visiting her sister in Portland that weekend. We're both idiots, Helena said bitterly, but we don't have to stay idiots. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. I want to know everything, Trent. Every lie, every secret, every detail of what they've been doing behind our backs. And then I want to make sure they face consequences for what they've done. I thought about the USB drive in my pocket, about the months of gaslighting and deception, about the baby that should have been a joy but had become a weapon. What kind of consequences? I asked. Helena's smile was sharp as a blade, the kind that makes sure everyone knows exactly who they really are. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. That evening, I sat in my hotel room with my laptop open, the USB drive from Ed connected and ready. Helena had gone home to continue her own investigation, promising to share whatever else she discovered. We'd exchanged numbers and agreed to meet again the next day. The security footage was extensive. Multiple camera angles covered the entire party space, with timestamps showing everything from setup to cleanup. I fast-forwarded through the early arrivals, looking for anything unusual. At 7:23 p.m., I found it. The camera positioned near the bar captured Zara and Derron in what they clearly thought was a private moment. They stood close together, his hand resting on her lower back in a gesture that was definitely not professional. She whispered something in his ear that made him smile and nod. At 7:41 p.m., another camera caught them near the restrooms. Derron handed Zara a small wrapped box, which she quickly tucked into her purse. The gesture was intimate, secretive, and completely damning. But the most revealing footage came from 8:15 p.m., just minutes before Zara's pregnancy announcement. A camera near the elevator bank showed them having what appeared to be an intense conversation. I couldn't hear the audio, but their body language told the story. Zara gesturing emphatically, Derron looking nervous, both of them glancing toward the main party area where I was standing with colleagues. They'd planned it. The whole announcement had been orchestrated, probably as a way to force my hand or legitimize their relationship. The timing wasn't coincidental. It was calculated. I saved the relevant clips to my laptop and made backup copies. Then I started going through Zara's digital footprint more systematically. She'd been careless with passwords, using variations of our anniversary date for most of her accounts. Within an hour, I had access to her email, social media, and cloud storage. What I found made my stomach turn. Photos from their Napa Valley trip, looking like a couple on their honeymoon, screenshots of house listings in expensive neighborhoods, with notes about our future home, text conversations about baby names, nursery decorations, and how they'd handle the Trent situation once the pregnancy was public. The Trent situation. That's what I'd become in my own marriage. But the most damaging evidence was a series of emails between Zara and her sister Jennifer, who lived in Seattle. The messages detailed the entire affair, from its beginning 6 months earlier to their plans for the future. Derron says he's going to leave Helena after the new year, one email read. He's already talked to a lawyer about protecting his assets. We just need to be patient a little longer. Another message was even more revealing. I know this is hard on Trent, but he'll be better off in the long run. He deserves someone who can actually give him children. This baby is going to change everything for the better. I closed the laptop and stared at the hotel room wall. 6 months. They'd been planning my life's destruction for half a year, and I'd been completely oblivious. Every late night, every mysterious phone call, every time Zara had seemed distant or distracted, it all made sense now. My phone buzzed with a text from Helena. Found something big. Can you meet tomorrow morning? 8 a.m. at the diner on Market Street. I texted back my agreement and tried to get some sleep, but my mind kept racing, processing the evidence and thinking about what Helena might have discovered. Whatever it was, her tone suggested it was significant. The next morning, I found Helena already seated in a back booth at Murphy's Diner, a stack of papers spread out in front of her. She looked like she hadn't slept much either. I hired a private investigator, she said without preamble. Someone I've used before for business purposes. He works fast. She slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were photographs, financial records, and what appeared to be a detailed timeline of Derron and Zara's relationship. It started at the company retreat in June, Helena said. The one in Lake Tahoe. They were both there, both had rooms on the same floor. The investigator found credit card records showing they had dinner together every night, plus charges for room service to Derron's suite. I flipped through the photos. Derron and Zara entering restaurants together, walking on the beach, sitting close together on what appeared to be a hotel balcony. The images were clear and unambiguous. There's more, Helena continued. Derron's been using company funds to pay for some of their activities. Dinners charged as client meetings, hotel rooms booked as business travel. Even the jewelry he bought her was expensed as employee recognition gifts. That was potentially criminal. Misuse of corporate funds could result in serious legal consequences, especially for a CEO. I also found this, Helena said, handing me a printed email. It's from Derron to his lawyer, sent 3 weeks ago. I read the message, my anger building with each line. Derron was asking about divorce procedures, asset protection strategies, and prenuptial agreement loopholes. He was also inquiring about managing potential HR complications related to workplace relationships. He's been planning to leave me, Helena said, her voice steady but cold. And he's been trying to figure out how to do it without losing money or facing professional consequences. What do you want to do with all this? I asked. Helena's expression hardened. I want to destroy him. Professionally, financially, socially. I want everyone to know exactly what kind of man he is. And Zara? Her too. They made their choices together so they can face the consequences together. I thought about the evidence we'd both gathered, the clear pattern of deception and betrayal. They'd been playing a long game, manipulating everyone around them while planning their future together. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated the people they were betraying. I have security footage from the party, I said, and access to Zara's emails and messages. Between what you've found and what I have, we can build a pretty comprehensive case. Good, Helena said, because I've already scheduled a meeting with the board of directors for Friday. Derron doesn't know about it yet. I'm going to present everything we've found and request a full investigation. Will they listen to you?" Helena smiled for the first time since I'd met her. "My family owns 12% of the company stock. They'll listen." We spent the next hour planning our approach, dividing responsibilities and coordinating our evidence. Helena would handle the corporate and financial aspects, while I focused on documenting the personal betrayal and timeline of deception. As we prepared to leave, Helena grabbed my arm. "Trent, I want you to know that I'm sorry. Sorry that my husband destroyed your marriage, sorry that I didn't see what was happening sooner, and sorry that you had to find out the way you did." "It's not your fault," I said. "We were both lied to." "Maybe, but now we're going to make sure everyone knows the truth." By Thursday afternoon, our plan was ready. Helena had confirmed her Friday meeting with the board, and I'd organized all our evidence into a comprehensive presentation. But as I sat in my cubicle, trying to focus on routine work tasks, I realized we had a problem. Derron was getting suspicious. I'd noticed him watching me throughout the week, his expression alternating between anger and concern. He'd also been having hushed conversations with various department heads, probably trying to control the narrative about the party incident. Word was spreading that he planned to frame the whole situation as a personal attack by an unstable employee. That afternoon, he proved my suspicions correct. "Trent, I need to see you in my office." His voice came over my desk phone, cold and commanding. I saved my work and headed to the executive floor, wondering if this was about to become a confrontation. Derron's corner office was a monument to corporate success, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, and walls covered with awards and photos of him, with various business leaders. He was standing behind his desk when I entered, his posture aggressive and intimidating. "Close the door?" he said. I did, then took a seat in one of the chairs facing his desk. He remained standing, clearly trying to use his height and position to establish dominance. "We need to talk about what happened at the party," Derron said, "and more importantly, we need to talk about what's going to happen next." "I'm listening." "You embarrassed yourself in this company with that little stunt. You violated privacy policies, disrupted a corporate event, and created a hostile work environment." His voice was controlled but angry. "But I'm willing to overlook all of that if you're smart about how you handle things going forward." I kept my expression neutral. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that you recognize reality. Your marriage is over. That's unfortunate, but it happens. Zara and I developed feelings for each other, and we're going to be together. Fighting that fact will only make things worse for everyone involved." The sheer arrogance of his words was breathtaking. He was standing there, in his expensive suit and corner office, telling me to accept that he'd stolen my wife and destroyed my life. "And if I don't accept reality?" I asked. Derron's expression hardened. "Then you'll find out that I have a lot more influence in this industry than you do. I can make sure you never work for another consulting firm in this city. I can make sure your professional reputation is destroyed. I can make your life very difficult, Trent." He leaned forward, placing his hands on the desk. "But I don't want to do that. I'd rather we handle this like adults. You sign a non-disclosure agreement, you stop spreading rumors and gossip about company employees, and you move on with your life. In return, I'll make sure you get an excellent reference when you find a new job somewhere else." "Somewhere else? Come on, Trent. You can't seriously think you can keep working here after what happened. It would be awkward for everyone involved." I stood up slowly, processing what he'd just said. He wasn't just asking me to accept his affair with my wife. He was demanding that I disappear quietly while he took over my life. "I need to think about it," I said. "Don't think too long," Derron replied. "This offer expires Monday morning." I left his office feeling like I'd just been mugged, but as I rode the elevator back down to my floor, I realized he'd made a crucial mistake. He'd shown his hand too early, revealed exactly how desperate he was to control the situation. That evening, I met Helena at a coffee shop near her neighborhood. She lived in an upscale area of the city, in a house that probably cost more than I'd make in a lifetime. But money hadn't protected her from betrayal any more than it had protected me. "He threatened you?" Helena asked after I described my conversation with Derron. "Basically, he wants me to sign an NDA and find a new job." That confirms what I suspected. He knows we're onto him, and he's panicking. Helena stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "My meeting with the board is tomorrow at 10, but I think we should move up our timeline." "What do you mean?" "I mean we should force his hand tonight. Make him do something stupid that we can use against him." She explained her idea, and I had to admit it was clever. Risky, but clever. At 9 p.m., I was sitting in my car outside Derron's house, a sprawling colonial in an exclusive suburb. Helena had texted him earlier, saying she was visiting her mother overnight and wouldn't be home until Saturday. According to our plan, she was actually in a hotel room across town, waiting for my signal. At 9:47 p.m., Zara's car pulled into the driveway. I started recording with my phone as she walked to the front door. She was carrying an overnight bag and what appeared to be takeout food. Derron answered the door immediately, kissing her before pulling her inside. They thought they were safe. Helena was supposedly out of town, I was presumably beaten down and defeated, and they could spend the night playing house in the home Derron shared with his wife. I waited 30 minutes, then walked to the front door and rang the bell. The look on Derron's face when he opened the door was priceless. He was wearing a bathrobe and slippers, clearly not expecting company. "Trent, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to discuss your offer," I said loudly enough for any neighbors to hear. "About the NDA and the job situation." "This isn't the time or place. Call my office tomorrow." "But you said not to think too long," I continued in the same carrying voice. "I wouldn't want the offer to expire." Zara appeared behind him, wearing one of Helena's bathrobes. The sight of my wife in another woman's clothes, in another woman's house, crystallized everything I'd been feeling into pure, cold anger. "Trent, you need to leave," Zara said. "This is harassment." "Is it harassment to discuss business with my boss?" I asked. "Or is it harassment for my boss to sleep with my wife in his wife's house?" "Keep your voice down," Derron hissed. "Why? Are you worried about what the neighbors might think?" A light came on in the house next door. "Good. Let them listen." "I've decided not to sign your NDA," I announced. "I think Helena should know that you're using her house for your affairs. I think the board should know that you're threatening employees. I think everyone should know exactly what kind of man you are." Derron stepped outside, closing the door behind him. He was trying to keep the conversation private, but it was too late for that. "You're making a huge mistake," he said quietly. "I tried to be reasonable, but if you want to play hardball, I can play that game too." "Good," I said. "I was hoping you'd say that." I pulled out my phone and showed him that I'd been recording our entire conversation. His face went white. "You recorded me without consent. That's illegal." "Actually, it's not. This is a one-party consent state, and I'm clearly one of the parties in this conversation." I'd done my research. But threatening an employee's career over a personal dispute, that might violate a few company policies. I turned and walked back to my car, leaving Derron standing in his driveway in a bathrobe, probably wondering how his perfect plan had started falling apart so quickly. As I drove away, I sent Helena a text. "Got it all. See you tomorrow." The board meeting was going to be very interesting. Friday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Helena's board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m., and I'd spent the night organizing our evidence into a presentation that would be impossible to dismiss or explain away. I arrived at work early, wanting to observe Derron's behavior before the meeting. He was already in his office when I got to my floor, and I could see him through his glass walls, pacing back and forth while talking animatedly on his phone, probably calling in favors or trying to get ahead of whatever damage he expected. At 9:45 a.m., I received a text from Helena. "It's time. Wish me luck." I watched from my cubicle as Derron left his office and headed toward the elevator, straightening his tie and putting on his confident CEO smile. He had no idea what was waiting for him in the boardroom. The meeting was scheduled to last an hour, but it went almost 2. I tried to focus on work, but my attention kept drifting to the elevator bank, waiting for some sign of how things were going. At 11:52 a.m., the elevator doors opened and Derron emerged. His face was flushed, his confident demeanor completely gone. He walked quickly toward his office, avoiding eye contact with everyone he passed. 5 minutes later, my desk phone rang. "Trent Ardell, please report to the boardroom immediately." I took the elevator to the 44th floor, where the executive conference room occupied a corner space with panoramic views of the city. The room was designed to intimidate, with a massive mahogany table and leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's cars. 6 board members sat around the table, along with Helena, Margaret from HR, and David Morrison from legal. The atmosphere was tense, professional, and somehow final. "Mr. Ardell, please have a seat," said Robert Chen, the board chairman. He was an elderly man with sharp eyes and the kind of presence that came from decades of making difficult decisions. I sat down, noticing that Helena gave me a small nod. Her expression was calm, but I could see satisfaction in her eyes. "We've been reviewing some serious allegations about employee conduct and potential misuse of company resources," Chen continued. "Mrs. Wilder has presented evidence that raises significant concerns about CEO Derron Wilder's professional judgment and ethical standards." Margaret opened a folder in front of her. "We've also reviewed the security footage from the holiday party, along with financial records and communication logs. The evidence is quite comprehensive." What we need from you, Morrison said, is your perspective on these events and any additional information you might have. For the next 40 minutes, I walked them through everything I'd discovered. The timeline of the affair, the evidence of financial impropriety, the threats Derron had made, and the recording from the previous night. I presented it all calmly and factually, letting the evidence speak for itself. When I finished, the room was silent for a long moment. "Mr. Ardell," Chen said finally, "we want to thank you for your honesty and cooperation. This situation is clearly difficult for you personally, but you've handled yourself professionally throughout." "What happens next?" I asked. "Mr. Wilder's employment with this company has been terminated, effective immediately," Chen announced. "We've also terminated Mrs. Ardell's employment due to her involvement in this situation and violation of company policies." I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Justice, but at the cost of everything I'd thought my life was going to be. "There will be a full investigation into any potential criminal charges related to misuse of company funds," Morrison added. "We'll also be reviewing all of Mr. Wilder's business decisions over the past year to ensure there are no other ethical violations." "What about me?" I asked. "You'll continue in your current position," Chen said, "with a promotion to senior project manager and a salary adjustment to reflect your new responsibilities. We value employees who demonstrate integrity, even in difficult circumstances." After the meeting, Helena and I rode the elevator down together in silence. When we reached the lobby, she turned to me. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Empty," I said honestly. "Relieved, but empty. I know what you mean. Justice doesn't fix everything, does it?" We walked outside into the crisp December air. The city moved around us with its usual energy, people hurrying to meetings and appointments, completely unaware that 2 lives had just been completely restructured in a conference room 44 floors above them. "What will you do now?" I asked. "Divorce proceedings start Monday. My lawyer says it should be straightforward, given the evidence we have." Helena adjusted her scarf against the wind. "What about you?" "Same, I guess. Though I suppose it's more complicated with the baby." Helena was quiet for a moment. "Trent, there's something else you should know. Something I found out this morning." I looked at her, wondering what other revelations were coming. "Zara isn't pregnant." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" My investigator did some digging into her medical records. She's been seeing a fertility specialist, but not for prenatal care. She's been trying to get pregnant, but she hasn't succeeded yet. I stared at Helena, processing this information. Then why did she announce it at the party? Probably hoping it would force Derron's hand, make him leave me faster, or pressure you into accepting the situation. Helena's expression was grim. The whole thing was a lie. The pregnancy, the insurance forms, all of it. I thought about the months of deception, the careful planning, the calculated cruelty of using my own medical condition against me. Even after everything I'd discovered, Zara could still find new ways to shock me. "I'm sorry," Helena said. "I know this is a lot to process." "Actually," I said, surprised by my own reaction, "I think I'm relieved. A baby would have complicated everything. This way, when the divorce is final, I can actually move on with my life." We said goodbye on the sidewalk, 2 people who'd been brought together by betrayal and who'd found a way to reclaim some measure of justice. Helena disappeared into the crowd, heading toward whatever came next for her. I stood there for a moment, looking up at the Meridian Tower where I'd worked for 8 years, where I'd met my wife, where I'd discovered her betrayal, and where I'd finally found the courage to fight back. Then I turned and walked toward my future, whatever that might look like. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You destroyed my life, and I'm going to destroy yours. D." I smiled and deleted the message. Derron could threaten all he wanted. He was unemployed, facing potential criminal charges, and about to lose everything in a very public divorce. His power to hurt anyone was gone. I had won. It didn't feel like I'd expected victory to feel, but it was definitely victory. The truth had come out, justice had been served, and I was finally free to build life based on honesty instead of lies. It was enough.